That's a tricky one. That's a tricky one because I grew up very, very poor. I grew up living by a landfill. I used to play and find toys in there, and I would always get in trouble by my mom whenever I would do that. We never went without a meal. Um, I never went without a loving parent. It was just my mom, my sister, and I. So I had a really rough start,
Yeah.
but I was really lucky to have the right things. And I know for me, self-compassion was really hard when I was trying to be the smartest person in the room or the strongest.
Hey, hi everyone. Welcome to Stepping Up Changemaker Stories. Today I've got a friend joining me all the way from the US, and his name is Tanner. Hi, Tanner. Really good to
Hello,
have you
Catherine.
here. So good to have you here, Tanner, and thank you so much for having this conversation with me. And I would love that everyone here know a little bit about you before we get started. Is that okay? Would you introduce yourself?
Yeah. So my name's Tanner. I'm an executive coach and an agile consultant. Usually what I do, or when I explain myself about what I do, is I help people get what they want. Sometimes that's organizations looking to, adjust their culture. Sometimes it's teams looking to up level their operating model. Sometimes it's individuals just looking to meet some of their own goals. I was a U.S. Marine turn technologist turn coach. I've worked at companies like LinkedIn and Salesforce. I've worked in ed tech, in gaming, in law enforcement. I was an intelligence operative and martial arts instructor in the Marine Corps. I started as a software engineer. I've done lots of different things in lots of different places.
Yeah, wow. Oh God, yeah, that's a lot of things. Tanner, thank you so much. I think if we had 4 hours, we would like to talk to you and for you to go through all of that. Um, so how many chapters? How can we remember? So how many chapters would you say the first one would be the
It's
US
funny.
Army?
I have three chapters. The first one was about strength. It was about who was stronger, and that was my time in the Marine Corps, was always being stronger than everybody else around me. And then it was about being smarter. It was about working for all these great technology companies and always being the smartest person in the room, or at least trying to be. And now this last pivot, and it's a pretty recent pivot, is into heart. It's a matter of helping people change their lives and being a part of that whole experience. So it
Right.
really has come down for me just in those three chapters of strength, mind, and heart.
Oh, love that. The strength, the mind, and the heart. Okay. And that is in the span of how many years?
Oh, geez. I'll be 48 this year. So, I mean, I've been since I was 18. So, what, 30 years?
Yeah.
30 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a long time.
Yeah. Yeah. It does help to just bring context and because you made it sound easy, but the three chapters, right? That's that is in the span of 30 years. Great. Yeah, so you've worked in the Marine Corps for how many years again?
It was 10, almost 11 years.
Okay. And then the tech company?
That's 15, 16 years now. So,
Okay.
yeah, I was in the Marine Corps from 95 until 2006, and then
Yeah.
2006 until pretty much now. Most of my business is in tech even now, but
Yeah.
my last full-time job was last year, so 2022.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. Fascinating. So what what prompted you to change? Because you've done this kind of like reinvention twice, which is most people, would find it even hard to do at least once. So yeah, what prompted you to make the change?
Well, I mean, there were two things, really. One of them was our daughter. She was our foster baby, and then we ended up adopting her. She was abandoned at the hospital right after birth. So she came home with us when she was 2 days old. And then we decided we were going to move across the country and live on the East Coast instead of living like in Silicon Valley, where I'd spent several years. And I just really enjoyed that experience. I wanted to give her a good life, and you really can't work the amount of hours and with the amount
Mm.
of stress as I was doing a lot of the jobs that I had. So I was looking for a change. But the second one sort of just fell into my lap. And I laugh, although I mean, this is traumatic for a lot of people, but I got laid off from my job at Salesforce with the what 400,000 plus people that were laid off in tech in 2022 or 2023. So it sort of fell in my lap. I always had this dream of wanting to work for myself, but I mean, I've got a
Okay.
family to take care of. There's no taking a chance on yourself when you've got this family that relies on you, right? So I never really took that plunge until I lost my job, and then I'm like, all right, I mean, now's my chance. I got some runway. Let's give it a try. And that was about a year ago now. In fact, a year ago to the day was when I got noticed that I was being let go from my job at Salesforce.
Wow. Wow. Okay. Yeah. So sometimes life just forces us to get there. Yeah.
It does. And there was someone I talked to about it, a mentor of mine, and the quote that she gave me was jump and the net will appear. And how interesting that I jumped and the net did appear. Even in my first year of business in 2023, I made enough to support my family. And it was a really rough year in tech for the businesses I was looking for.
It
But I
was.
made it work and I feel really good about that.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. That's such a proud moment for sure.
Yeah.
Um, and thank you so much for sharing that. I think that
Mhm.
is just something that is relatable. I was also in tech, and I know there's been a lot of my ex-colleagues who got impacted, and
Mhm.
so that's been quite a dark chapter for our industry in the last
Yeah.
2 years. Yeah, and I'm
Yeah.
sure there's someone here who can relate with your story. So Tanner, here's a question that's a bit different. What is your definition of success?
I that question. I'm reacting very strongly to that question.
Hmm.
You ever heard of a thing called the arrival fallacy?
No, tell me more.
I actually posted about it on LinkedIn the other day. Um, it's the idea that when you reach a place that you're going to put up your arms in celebration and go, "Yay, I'm there." Like when we turned 21 years old and it's like, "Look, I'm 21 now, I'm an adult." And it really felt no difference than when you were 20 years old and 364 days. It was the same thing. You just happen to be one day older. And I think just the notion of success and what does success look like isn't it comes in a different form. Atomic Habits. There was a book by James Clear. I absolutely love the book Atomic Habits. And he talks about the idea that you don't create your outcomes, you create your habits, and your habits
Mhm.
create your outcomes. So
Yeah.
to me, being successful is more about are you keeping score about the things that you're doing that get you a little bit closer to where you want to be? Or are you putting a score in the other column that takes you a little further away from it? And
Mm.
I think success is really about knowing those what those things are and knowing what the score is, because at some point you're going to cross that threshold of 21 years old or getting the promotion that you want. And you're going to realize that it was the journey that was a lot more interesting than that destination, that success.
Yeah.
And I think if you get too wrapped up in the notion of success, you get too wrapped up in that rat race that we all tend to play in the corporate world.
Yeah. Yeah, I resonate with that a lot. I think I would classify myself as a high performer, high achiever. I'm really good at keeping myself busy and also setting goals. And I think that really resonated with me because the focus, I could be so overly focused on the
Mhm.
destination, right? But to the point that I was so attached to it. And when I don't make it, I would beat myself up.
Yeah,
um, instead of focusing on the process, the systems,
yeah,
how to get there. All I got to do is just to give my best, in that moment, every single day. Right? That's the process.
yeah,
And then the result takes care of itself most of the times that you would get the
Yeah. I mean, it's
yeah,
I heard this once. I forget where I heard this, but it's like everybody celebrates the 10 pounds that somebody loses, but nobody celebrates the salad that you had on a Tuesday. But it's the salad that you had on a Tuesday that really matters, and getting that consistency in your diet that gets you towards those goals. So finding a way to celebrate the small things every single day, I think is a really important thing to do.
Yeah, and this is so timely as well with how everybody approaches New Year's, like slay 2024, set the goals, and it's just so much pressure. And in
Yep.
approaching the new year, it's such a great reminder to just take it one step at a time and do your best every single day and just follow and trust the process. Yeah.
Do you set any New Year's resolutions?
I set an intention for 2024. I use that I've got my 3 vision boards actually in front of me here behind the laptop. So
Yeah.
then I have one word, and my one word, that intention is love, um, because I'm trying to get out of my comfort zone this
Mm.
year. And I want to focus on love, love to serve people in our field of coaching and transforming people, but also to focus on love versus fear.
Yeah.
Because when you get out of your comfort zone, there will
Mm.
be fears. So I want to focus on the love. What about you?
Yeah. Well, what you brought to mind was this thing that I've been exploring a lot more with clients of you got goals, you got themes, and you got habits. And a
Mm,
lot of times what coaches tend to do is they go, what are your goals? What are we going to accomplish in the next 3, 4, 6 months together? And there's nothing worse than accomplishing a goal that was never worth accomplishing in the first place.
mm,
So goals can be useful for some people, but I've been trying to play with the other things like themes and habits. And you actually, what you just talked about with love is a theme. It's it's a thing that you're always thinking about that helps you pick a path every single day. And for me, I have a sticky where I keep my own theme, and it's got 2 words on it, and it's got a date, and it says November 14th, and the 2 words are reinvention and reimagining. And that's my
oh,
theme for this season. I don't know
love it.
what it's going to be, but I'll tell you this 2 days before I lost my job at Salesforce, the one that I had written down, a brand new theme, a sticky right below my monitor said acceptance. And that was my theme.
Wow.
And there's nothing more that could have tested that
Oh
theme
my God.
than being
Yeah.
laid off.
Oof. That is deep. That is such the right word for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. So this year is reinvention and reimagination. Hmm. Everything is possible.
Yeah.
That's what comes up
Yeah.
to me.
And you know what? A thing I just did with a new client of mine last night is we were trying to figure out what they wanted to do. Was it going to be a goal, a theme, or a habit?
Yeah.
And they landed on themes. But then what I asked them to do between then and the next session was, I want you to not only write down like 3 or 4 themes that are really going to resonate with you for our time together, but write down their antonym, write down the opposite of what they are, so you know what you're saying no to as well. And I thought that was an interesting way of ensuring that a theme also guarantees you're saying no to the right things while you're saying yes to other
Yeah.
things.
Absolutely. See, this is what I love about you, because every time you post about something, I really resonate with it because it's just the out of the box thinking. Let's focus on that, because there are a lot of people and can learn from you. So the first one is you talk about the words, and then second one would be about the antonym. So let's just
Mhm.
go slow on these two. Um,
Yeah.
the first one, how do you pick those words? Would you mind sharing the step by step, like 3 steps thing in order to find that word if someone here wants to do the same?
Oh gosh, that's such a good question. I don't know how to answer it. I'll say this much. I stumbled on themes from a video I ran into on YouTube from a dude named Gray. And I watch that video every time I'm thinking that it's time for a new theme to remind myself of what they're really about and to start getting the idea in my head.
Yeah.
And what I tend to do is I look at the date. I'm like, it's been a while. Is this still the right theme, or is it just a sticky on my monitor now and it's mostly meaningless?
Mm.
And when I start reaching the place where it doesn't feel like that's the theme anymore,
Yeah.
I always have a thing. Every single day, I go for a walk around my neighborhood in a different place. And I always walk out the door with a question that I want to try to answer as I walk. And I just sit there and talk to myself. And I start, it's essentially coaching myself, is what it is. I start coaching myself and talking to myself to see where I land. And if I can't land anywhere with something like this, I'll then go find a coach buddy of mine and, trade a little bit of coaching back and forth to see if they can help me get unstuck.
Mm.
So how would I do it? I make sure I'm not in a place that I'm always at, and then I let my mind wander and find its way wherever it wants to go.
Oh, that is so important. Yeah, to just change your physical environment,
Mhm.
um, and then find that creative flow. Yeah, that is such a great reminder. Thank you. And what about the second one, the antonym? Tell me more about that.
This is actually the first time I'm playing with it. We'll see how it works. Part of the reason I know that I did that with this client was because they struggle with saying yes to everything. And
Mm,
I wanted to make sure that they picked something that didn't make it so they could say yes to everything.
mm,
And the idea that came to mind for me and the request I made of them was, will you write down those antonyms? Because I think it's important that if you're going to write down this word, if you're going to have this theme, then it should be guiding your choices. And if it's not guiding your choices, then it's really not much of a theme. It's just a motto, which is good too, but that's not the intent. The intent is every single day when you're making a choice, this theme is going to come to mind and help you make the choice that might be a little more different than the one you might have made otherwise.
mm. Yeah, absolutely. And this is like is very timely too, with regards to these two steps that you have shared, because I kind of see the theme, how this could help someone who's navigating change. And that's
Yeah.
why I just thought spontaneously that let's go there. So this antonym, it's really great because often we are so focusing on the doing, right? We're a human being, and focusing so much on the doing.
Yeah.
We've got a lot of to-do lists, but then we could easily get overwhelmed because the to-do list gets longer. We're saying yes to more things. And what you're saying is that it is good to balance that with things that we say no to.
Yes, there was you made me smile because you brought to mind a quote from a mentor of mine that I love. I've been using this one for years and it's one of my
What is it?
favorite
Tell
and it
us.
rings so true to me. If you can't say no, your yes doesn't mean very much.
Powerful. Yeah. Let that sink in, everybody. If you cannot say no, then your yes doesn't mean very much.
Right.
It rings true for recovering people pleaser like myself. That's for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Ah, great. Tanner, thank you very much. Is there, another tips that you have for anyone who is navigating change, whether it's career change, whether it's um, changing a role, whether it's something else, changing country, I don't know, because change is so universal, and anything that's that is coming from your personal experience that would be really, really helpful in navigating change.
Yeah. I mean, I remember there was a thing that the Marine Corps had taught me years and years ago, but it was never a thing that they said out loud. It was just sort of a thing that was embedded into you. And then when I was working on my MBA, when I lived in Nevada, a one of the professors had said something, and it's always stuck with me. And he said, "An organization cannot empower you. You can only empower yourself."
Mm,
And I find that to be really true. And the Marine Corps was really good about that. And they wanted you to take charge even when you made mistakes as you were doing so.
mm,
And also what the Marine Corps had taught me was the value of experimentation is to just try a thing, a small thing that has a little bit of risk, and then learn from that thing so that then it will then educate you for taking bigger risks later. And so you were often put in places where you would fail or you would do something wrong and you just wouldn't succeed. And it didn't feel good to fail, but you learned how to find your way to the place of learning rather than the critical place of failure.
Yeah.
Um, and there was so I think that's important. I think knowing that there's a path that you want to go,
Yeah.
finding the right ways to walk that path in small ways with what you have today, and then use a little bit more information that you have from that to then decide what to do next.
Yeah.
Like, for example, don't just move to that country, go visit it for a week or stay with someone there for a week, or don't just change jobs or pivot your career. Play with it a little bit. I mean, the way I sort of landed in coaching was I started doing it in my free time, or the way, here's a good one. I was always afraid to speak in front of people. But I remember telling a
Do
boss, I
you?
want to go up on stage and actually like give like be an expert and teach people something. But I couldn't just start there because it was too freaking scary. So I started writing and I started posting all my thoughts on LinkedIn and on my own blog. And that gave me the luxury of a backspace button where if I said something stupid, I could take it back before I published. And that gave me a lot more courage to actually stand up on a stage. And I've been in crowds as large as 3 or 4,000 and speaking in front of them now. And Lord knows I still get nervous, but it's not the same because I felt like I got there one small step at a time.
So true. Certainly for myself, um, in in those years working in tech industry, I think the the high-paced environment, I guess there was never a space to just tell ourselves, let's fail.
Yeah.
Because it's all about getting more money, getting more profit, getting more success. So I think that is something that we need to normalize more. And I remember
Yeah.
also in the coaching certification, my motto as a recovery perfectionist, um, throughout the certification with CDI was to celebrate failure. I remind myself I had to look for failure. If I
Yeah.
do not look for failure, I wasn't going to grow fast enough. And isn't it a more fun approach to failure? We just celebrate it. And I guess I just wanted to normalize that for myself. Like, yay, failing.
Well, yeah,
It's
and you know
hard.
what? I mean, that reminds me too, because I remember how they set it up in some of the CTI courses. It was like no one gets to be right or wrong. And I thought it was great. I mean, yeah, people are so obsessed with being right. And I do like how they turned it around that no answer is wrong and everything is included. And it
Yeah,
was just such a beautiful way of phrasing it.
yeah, absolutely. Tanner, thank you very much. And the next question I have for you would be, what has helped you? Perhaps people, perhaps tools, resources that help you navigate the change in your life, perhaps at different points, but they have helped you significantly. What would you say about that?
Oh, your habits. Um, that's the first answer that comes to mind. It really, there's another part to that too.
Yeah.
People make so many decisions based in fear that's disguised as practicality. I
Mm.
know for myself, I have I've lost so many years where I could have been much further along than I am right now, but I was too scared to give it a try. And I think that's often where people land is they are trying to be practical, and especially when it is about I need to create a website or I need to have the perfect business proposal. And I think the better way of going at it, and I know it's scary for me, is to just do something and try it and see what happens, even if it's not perfect. Because even if you try to make it perfect, it still won't be.
Yeah.
So do something, do the right balance of doing and being. But
Yeah.
in this case, when it comes to trying something new, how interesting that people tend to focus on the being rather than the doing,
Mm.
when typically in the things that they know, they're always so busy doing, but not enough being. So with these scary things, just try something and build up a little momentum. Worry about what direction you're headed a
Yeah.
little bit less until you're picking up at least a little bit of speed. Because when you're standing still, inertia is going to keep you still. So
Mm.
I think for me, what's helped me is this habit of always trying to experiment in a way that's going to teach me a little bit more.
Yeah.
And I still, as a business owner, am not getting it right. I still have a lot of bad habits of where I am more practical, but it really is fear. And my own demons I wrestle with, like all of us do every day. And I don't always make the best decisions, but I do try to learn from each and every one that I make.
Yeah. I love that. And what comes up to me as well is that outlook. The best way to describe this is that, when you shared that, I felt like if you were to get an advice from your future self kind of thing,
Hmm.
what would your future self tell you? And to me, most of the time, my future self would just say, start somewhere, do one thing, give it a try. And I think that feeling of connecting with our future selves could help us to see this life as we don't live here forever, right? We are here to live in the here and now. The present is all we have. And if that's something that you would like to um, go for, it is just about focusing on the habits, like you said, give it a try
Yeah.
in one small form. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, I think the important point about that future self too is that future self is going to help you figure out what the right habits are to do today. It's the things that you're going to keep score on. So here's where I want to be. This is what the success looks like. So what do I need to do every single day that gets me a little bit closer to that? And give yourself some grace when you don't get it right every single day because you won't, but try to get it right more days than you get it wrong. And I think that's an important thing to develop is developing those habits and knowing what those habits should be, and then giving yourself, both grace and credit for what you're doing and not doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And one last question for you, Tanner, because I think it would be really, really wonderful to hear from you. The role of self-compassion. Also, I think um, being a business owner, but also someone um, who work in Marine Corps, you were focusing so much on strength, and I want to know your journey with self-compassion. I don't know why it came up, but I'm just so curious about it. um,
Ah,
yeah, I wonder if you can share.
that's a tricky one. That's a tricky one because I grew up very, very poor. I grew up living by a landfill. I used to play and find toys in there, and I would always get in trouble by my mom whenever I would do that. We never went without a meal. Um, I never went without a loving parent. It was just my mom, my sister, and I. So I had a really rough start,
Yeah.
but I was really lucky to have the right things. And I know for me, self-compassion was really hard when I was trying to be the smartest person in the room or the strongest. I felt like I had more to prove because of how far where I started. I felt like I needed to prove my worth in all those rooms and all the tech companies in the Marine Corps by doing all these great things. And I always felt like somebody was keeping score. It wasn't until one day when I realized I shouldn't be the one thinking I don't belong. I should be the one recognizing and acknowledging how far I've come, so much further than all these people. And then self-compassion really showed up. And that was part of my acceptance journey as well. This is not a thing that's in my distant past. This is more in my recent past. So the self-compassion really showed up where I would give myself a lot more credit than I did before. And I wasn't so interested in making sure I met other people's measure of success. I instead was trying to meet my own. And I think that was a really important pivot to make and realization to have is that if anybody belonged in this room, it was me. And since then, self-compassion hasn't been nearly as much of a problem. And I remember someone asked me, if your book had a title, what would it be? And I think my answer was something along the lines of, You Are Enough, or I Belong, or You Matter. It was somewhere in that space. And for me, that's what I think of when I think of self-compassion.
Yeah. That was just something I needed to hear, and that also kind of confirmed why I chose Tanner to be with us today. On a personal level, I resonated with your story, your book title, and that just really, really touched me in a deep way. So, Tanner, thank you so much for being here and for sharing your story. And there's so many things that I am sure many people can learn from and start navigating their career change or their change journey. And yeah, I really want to thank you for it, for being here and spending time with me.
Of course. Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And it's great to see you.